Hi, welcome everybody. So today's session will be carried out by Satish Jipster. So he'll be explaining how to secure Gen AI applications and AI agents on AWS. So here is a brief introduction of Satish Jipster. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for taking the time to attend today's session. And how many of you have are working on AWS services? All of you, okay. Especially on AI workloads. Okay. So you must be familiar with most of the AWS services that we would be covering in this session. Primarily, we'll talk about how to secure Gen AI applications and AI agents on AWS. Yeah, last year I did have some time around this time, so I did some of the certifications. I kept myself busy with. Yeah. So this is the agenda for today. We will take a quick look at Gen AI and AI agents. What kind of services are used on AWS to build those? Just informational to bring everybody on the same page. And then we will look into AWS security framework for AI workloads, the shared responsibility model. And then we'll look into protecting it from the IAM point of view, protecting the data and the infrastructure from a network point of view, and how do we log, monitor, and detect threats using AWS services, and securing AI agents, and also we'll take a look at governance, risk, and compliance. So when you build a product or a service or an application, for any enterprise or a startup, all of these things come into play, right? You have to be compliant, secure, and to be able to use all of the services, not like get the application up and running. You have to, design, build with security in the first place. So introduction to Gen AI applications and AI agents. And we all know Gen AI application, we use large language models to create those and to create innovative applications. Most of them are already in use today. You might be already using a lot of these Gen AI applications day to day. AI agents, the primary AI agents, you develop, build, and deploy using SageMaker to automate some of the most common tasks. And they do integrate seamlessly with other AWS services. We start early? They're all showing. 2 minutes early, okay, that's why, okay. We just started, here's the agenda. And we just talked about what Gen AI application and AI agents are in AWS. The common challenges in securing Gen AI applications and AI agents. Most of it is like, day to day, you might be familiar with all of this, like, identity and access management issues. Of course, when you use data to train your models and, you have to protect that data. And also when you design and build your application, you have to secure it from a DevOps point of view. And also from an API security point of view, you have to use the services to protect the API endpoints. And cloud misconfiguration, of course, you don't want to expose any of the data or API endpoints, and also to be able to detect threat and monitor ongoing security issues. So AWS security, how does this is a common security framework that AWS uses. So when you want to create a Gen AI application or an AI agent, this is the common set of steps that you will follow, right? So the reason I put this slide is to have a security-based approach to all of these, like from the start, so that you can choose the right services After you identify the use cases, you choose all the AWS services. We'll look into all of the AWS services. That some of them you might be familiar with, or or you can consider while you're building your solution, architecting your solution. Data preparation, and when you develop the model, deploy, integrate, and monitor and optimize for ongoing security issues. This is one of the common, basic slide, shared responsibility model. Just because you build and deploy application on AWS, it's not going to be secure by default. There's a customer's responsibility and the AWS responsibility. So, so this will give a perspective of what we need to do as a customer when we design and build our AI application or agents on AWS. And this is another well-architected framework. It has 6 pillars. Familiar with these 6 pillars also will help you design and put together a robust and secure architecture. So we talked about GenAI application and AI agents. So the key services for creating GenAI applications: Amazon Q, the most common use case, chatbot, request response kind of thing. Amazon Bedrock, to be able to build and scale applications using the foundation models that are available. Amazon SageMaker, to design, deploy, operate, manage, and maintain the whole life cycle using SageMaker. And Amazon Nova, it has like pre-tuned some of the models that you can use to train your data. And of course, all of this has to run on AI infrastructure, EC2 instances and other services, IAM and other services. Of course, everything is based on data, and we'll take a look at some of the data services also and how you protect the data that you use to train and train the model, and also the live data that you have after you go to production with those apps. All of these services familiar to you? And this is relatively new, Amazon Nova, but all of the other services should be. Some of the use cases in GenAI, I just put this slide. We are all familiar with building chatbots, used for conversation analysis and code generation, personalization, productivity, and creativity. You can, when you build any of the GenAI applications, you can have these use cases into consideration and build your own. And key services for creating AI agents: contact lens, which is at the forefront to analyze your data, the voice, customer service interactions that you have, sentiment analysis, and all of those at the forefront. And Amazon Bedrock, where you have all the industry models, you train using these models. SageMaker, as I mentioned, to design, deploy all of the whole AI solution. Of course, you have the Trainium model. Use cases for building high-value AI agents, mainly for process automation, right? You create your AI agents, to automate your processes, and you can also create your own agent to, process all of these millions of alerts and events that you receive, and to be able to pinpoint the real alert that you need to focus on. Which is real-time data analysis. That's a use case. Automated customer interactions. All of the customer. Now when you call, human agent answers, right? So imagine from a 24/7 point of view. You have an agent answering all your questions. Deflecting 50 to 70% of the calls. And only creating tickets, which the AI agent is not able to resolve. So all of that, it needs data, again, the data that you would use to train and create those agents. Personalized marketing is another use case. And Again, you can create an agent to monitor all of this security alerts and events to take action. So, so this is one of the, primary service that is used to secure any AI workloads, any AWS workload, any workloads on AWS. So again, so we use IAM here to manage and manage all of the AI workloads. Basically, we use roles, policies, service roles. I'm sure you have all used all of this, right? Like basic identity and access management. Who has access to what? To access services, accessing other services, accessing data, user access, all of those revolve around IAM. So lake formation, it's where you store all of your data on-prem, cloud. You just bring all of the data in one place to either train your model or for information query and designing your solution. So again, IAM is used to grant specific access to resources in S3 bucket or SageMaker notebooks. And also you can use lake formation for data level granular permissions, like at a table and a column level. When you integrate with other services also, like Bedrock, have only, grant only permission that these services need to access to only the data that this particular solution need to access. And using secret manager to store API keys and credentials instead of directly, having it in your code. Avoid hard coding keys. Use secret manager to store all your passwords and credentials, which will automatically provide automatic rotation. Otherwise, have regular key rotation policies, and also use CloudTrail to monitor and audit the usage of API keys and credentials. Implementing least privilege for AI agents. We talked about this. Only grant, define minimal permissions. Granting IAM policy, only the access that the AI agent need to perform. And then also grant access to data only what this particular agent need access to. Once you have all the data in the lake, grant access to only the data that it needs access to. Data security in Gen AI application or AI agents. Encryption is key. So if you're not using all of these services, KMS or S3 side encryption, you could use these services to encrypt the data that's in motion and at rest. And also, before uploading to S3, you can also do have client-side encryption to encrypt before storing it in S3. So these are some of the services that you can use to protect your data. We talked about this, KMS and S3, and also you can have at the S3 level bucket policies and access control. Again, you can also use IAM rules to restrict access to encrypted data. These are some of the other techniques that you can use to mask information, mask the data, like PII information, social security, credit cards, and other information. Why do you want to do this from a compliance point of view and from a regulatory privacy regulation point of view? You can use these techniques to protect your data. AWS Maze is another service to automatically detect PII and financial data in AI data sets. And you can use some of the techniques we saw in the previous slide to mask those before you train and train your models. And Macy can be integrated directly with S3. So all the data that you have in S3, it can automatically discover sensitive data. AWS Glue is another service. So if you want to transform data and use some of these techniques like hashing, tokenization, encryption, or redaction, you can use AWS Glue to transform this data into so that it's not accessed. So the sensitive data is not accessed by these services or your solution. Protecting AI models from threats. So this is the most secure way of doing things. Like you can use AWS private link, and also you can use VPC isolation. We deploy VPC isolated so that it's not with other VPCs and we can also secure using security groups and network ACLs. AWS private link is direct access to your data, and then your data is not exposed to the public internet. Preventing model inversion, adversarial attacks, and prompt injection. You can use these three methods to mitigate those by limiting the number of access to the outputs using privacy techniques, and by implementing input validation and training method. And also, for SQL prompt injection, you can use sanitize the user inputs to prevent malicious prompts from exploiting the model. You can use Amazon Gateway and WAF to secure model endpoints. How many of you use WAF today? WAF or API Gateway? Okay. Basically, again, all of these services uses API, so you can use API Gateway to create secure, stable connections. From a monitoring and logging point of view, CloudWatch and CloudTrail. How many? Almost everybody uses CloudWatch and CloudTrail, right? Again, it comes down to monitoring. All the API calls that has been made using CloudTrail related to AI services, and you want to store it for auditing and forensic purposes. So CloudWatch, again, you might be already monitoring other infrastructure events using CloudWatch. Again, you want to specifically set up alerts for unusual activity or performance degradation using CloudWatch. And I'm sure when you use SageMaker and Bedrock, make sure it's configured to send alert logs to CloudWatch and CloudTrail. Otherwise, we won't have any visibility into what's going on. Network security for AI applications. Securing endpoints with the AWS WAF and Shield. You can use these two services to protect against firewall. Basically it acts as a web-based web application firewall. It protects against DDoS attacks and other things. And again, make sure it's deploy AWS WAF in the front for services like SageMaker endpoints or Gateway. Again, you can implement network, segmentation for AI workloads. You want to add anything to this? Good, okay. So, again, at the network segmentation level within the VPC, you can implement, VPCs, security groups, and network ACLs. You can fine-tune all of these to add more security to your AI solution. Again, network security groups and network ACLs you can implement also for both inbound and outbound traffic to restrict unauthorized traffic. API gateway, use protect against web-based attacks. Lambda, you can use Lambda to take automated action. When you detect CloudWatch, when you have any CloudWatch events or CloudTrail events, you can use Lambda to take automated action. If AWS Transit Gateway is another service that you can use when data on both cloud and on-premise involved. You can use this service to connect multiple VPCs on-prem and on the cloud. This will act as a centralized hub and eliminate complex peering. Logging, monitoring, and threat detection. We talked about this. You want to make sure you keep a cloud. Enable CloudTrail for auditing all API-related calls with respect to AI-related API calls, especially made by SageMaker, Bedrock, and Lambda, and storing them in all of this. CloudTrail logs in S3 for long-term storage, or CloudWatch for analysis. What really happened. You can use that to do for analysis and reporting and build dashboards using the data that is stored in S3. And Amazon CloudWatch and Security Hub. How many of you use Security Hub today? Security Hub is primarily as a centralized dashboard where you can feed in events from other services, including GuardDuty, Inspector, and CloudTrail. So instead of looking at CloudTrail or Inspector or GuardDuty, you can feed all of that into the Security Hub and for real-time monitoring across all of your infrastructure, including the AI workloads. So the previous slide was, this is for real-time monitoring, and this one, GuardDuty and Amazon Detective for threat detection. So basically, GuardDuty uses machine learning to analyze all of your CloudTrail. Instead of us, manually looking at CloudTrail logs, VPC flow log, DNS logs, GuardDuty has a lot of inbuilt. It's a trained machine learning, algorithm to analyze all of this and produce meaningful alerts and events, which then can be fed into Security Hub for centralized visibility. Again, you can also use Amazon Detective to analyze security incidents from GuardDuty, CloudTrail, and VPC flow logs. Any of you use GuardDuty or Detective today? GuardDuty at least? This has been, 7-8 years, GuardDuty has been in place for 7-8 years. Again, AWS Lambda, you can set up alerts and automated responses. So when something unusual, an unusual API call or activity happens, you can set up Lambda to take automated action, integrated with GuardDuty, CloudWatch, and Security Hub to trigger action based on security findings. So we feed everything into Security Hub, and then Lambda can take automated action based on security findings. And you can also use SNS or Slack for real-time notification, send alerts too. Securing AI agent deployment on AWS. So So when you deploy AI agents or Gen AI application on Bedrock or SageMaker, um, ensure that it's not AI agents are not exposed to the public internet. Host AI agents in SageMaker endpoints with VP integration for network isolation. We saw this in the couple of slides before. Again, in IAM roles to restrict access to SageMaker resources, and then data encryption. We did look at all these three. This is at the network layer, and this is at the access level, and then the third one is the data level, encryption and access. You can also use step functions. This is another service, step functions, to orchestrate multi-step workflows for AI agents. So you can use that for security and compliance purposes, the step function service. Secure API gateway integration for AI interactions. So you can use use this service, API gateway, to monitor and log events. Again, enabling cloud watching logs and CloudTrail to monitor API activity and detect anomalies. Governance, compliance, and risk management. So AS artifacts, you can use this to produce reports based on how you run your workloads. From a compliance point of view, GDPR, HIPAA, or SOC 2. If you're a startup and using, build a Gen AI solution or an AI agent, you can use SOC 2 report to, produce to the auditors, to demonstrate compliance with regulatory requirements. You can use AWS config service to monitor and record config changes to all of the AWS services which we saw. Again, using config rules to enforce compliance, and data, from a data point of view, will be looked at implementing encryption, access controls, and data anonymization. Auditing and reporting, we looked at this for AI system, AWS CloudTrail, CloudWatch, and you can integrate with other third-party tools for additional insight and compliance management. So here's a summary. How do you secure your Gen AI agents and AI agent solution on AWS based on everything that we looked at? Use SageMaker for and Bedrock for secure agent deployment. CloudTrail and track AI agent behavior on CloudTrail and GuardDuty. Use CloudWatch. And basically use all of the AWS services like Security Hub, GuardDuty, and WAF to monitor and track everything is going on within your infrastructure. And use Security Hub also. Security Hub is not mentioned in this slide. Feed everything to GuardDuty and GuardDuty into Security Hub to be able to visualize centrally. That's all the information I have for. By going through all of the information available on AWS. Yeah. Any questions?
Listen really close.
Yeah, again, you use SageMaker and Bedrock to build, design, deploy, and all of these AI agents and all of the services that we saw. When to.
So that is part of agentic AI as well.
Yeah. Yes. You either build a Gen AI application or AI agents using Bedrock or SageMaker. Part of the solution. Yeah. Yeah. No. Yeah, from an operational point of view? Yeah. Yes. We went through the steps, right? Use cases, when they identify the use cases, when so through all of those steps, right, have security in mind so that, you can design and deploy a secure solution, not like security doesn't come after you build and deploy. So, this step, right? When you identify the use cases, we saw all the services that you can use to protect, right? So choose all the AWS services that you can use, like Guard Duty, API Gateway, Security Hub, CloudTrail, CloudWatch. Include all of that. Even if it's it's not a big, even if it's a small solution, just have some of them in place, and they're going to charge only for things that you use. So you have all of this automatically monitoring it without someone, physically looking at, like, what's going on, like, what's making calls to what, you know. So you have centralized visibility, and, if something critical, you can use the Lambda to take some of the automated action. So when, in the middle of the night, nobody's there, so it takes care of some of the automated, For example, someone using IAM role, or, to access something, you can just lock that, disable that role, disable that IAM access. And yeah, through all, to answer your question, yes. So yeah. So those we saw using, WAF and you can use WAF Shield to prevent some of those attacks. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Can you give the microphone to her, please? Yes.
Looking to understand the use cases that you outlined in a little bit more depth, I'm assuming these are the 5 most popular use cases that you have uncovered. Would you have any suggestions of other resources and other materials I may look at?
For building or for securing?
Just initially the use cases prior to securing solutions.
Use cases for GenAI applications?
Correct.
Yeah, so I had this mentioned here. This slide, right?
This slide, exactly.
Yeah, sorry.
Yes, that one.
This is for AI agents.
Yeah.
Common use cases for building AI agents.
Yeah.
And this one for, common use cases for GenAI application.
Okay. Can I take a picture?
Yes, please, yeah.
Thank you.
There is an architecture of like bunch of EC tools within a VPC, and then like you mentioned, like a bunch of security. But if I use a AWS Amplify, a lot of those servers I cannot put in. I have trouble putting in within a VPC. So does that mean it is more secure to use EC tools within on my own VPC with security groups, rather than use like Amplify, AWS Amplify?
I'm not sure about AWS Amplify. You have more information on what AWS Amplify does? Why do you use Amplify?
AWS Amplify is like when you try to create a website with backend, it's kind of like a simple way of building it. And if you build it for you, like some Lambda functions, but kind of like there's no like a button that you press that you create a VPC within it, and there's no like much the concept of NACLs or security groups. But if you move on to the other architecture, like you create your own VPC, you create like security groups within like, and put it within like EC tools, then it fits better what you're talking about. So the architecture with VPC is more secure?
Transit gateway, I think in your scenario, this might fit in your scenario because this is kind of a hybrid model with VPC, without VPC, and on-prem stuff. So this might be your answer. You could look into this particular service, transit gateway.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Hello. You had a great slide where you mentioned the model inversion, prompt injection, some of these aspects. When it comes to thinking about, when I think about securing like production or enterprise workloads on AWS and Gen AI workloads, so much of it is just general AWS best practices and the way that you started with the shared responsibility model. But that slide where you're talking about the model inversions, this seems to be a specific area of security applicable to Gen AI workloads. And I know that there's several of these that are emergent within this quality or paradigm of application development, Gen AI powered applications. What would you say that this is unique to Gen AI applications? Is this where you're spending most of your new time thinking about how do I secure or against these kinds of attacks? Or are there other sort of aspects that are novel to Gen AI development versus just the general securing of workloads on AWS?
I think, this is more specific to Gen AI, and the other stuff is like how you go about protecting any workloads on AWS, right? Like any other application, but this is more relevant to AI applications and AI workloads.
Yes. Are there any other aspects which are specific like this is that you
Data.
say? Yeah.
Data, of course.
Yep. Data. Okay.
Once you have all of your data in the data lake or in S3, so your AI agents or the AI apps, they access data, right? Like making sure the data is okay and the access is okay, encrypted, using keys, and when you create and train the model, this is the initial phase. When you create and train the model is when you protect the model, right?
Excellent.
And the access, once it's in production, you protect the endpoints. You don't want someone else using some other credentials to use those API endpoints. So we saw that in one of the slides, and then you track everything using CloudTrail.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Thank you for having insights. Just a quick question. Any key factors to be considered for responsible AI?
Responsible AI, yes. It comes in the beginning of the project, right? So when you train your model, what are the parameters and the factors that you use to train the model, right? Like the data, the bias, and all of that information that you have in your data to, and follow with the best practices, and make sure you train the model in such a way that it's not biased.
So basically on Amazon Bedrock, any of the guidelines related to responsible AI is available?
Yes, if you use the fine-tuned models, instead of creating your own model, if you use some of the fine-tuned models like, the Amazon Nova and other models available in SageMaker Jumpstart, for example, those have all of those principles incorporated already.
Okay.
And they make sure that all of that is taken care of. So you're not rethinking and okay, how do I make this more be often responsible AI solution, right?
Because if in case if I'm using like LLM other than Amazon, like my foundation model is out of AWS. So if I'm building my own on creating my own model on that foundation model, then do I need to consider those things while creating my solutions on Bedrock?
Yes, of course. Yeah. And then, when you have, of course, you're going to have your data, right?
Yeah.
So, the way you train your model is going to, determine the effectiveness of your solution, right? So
Okay, thank
I
you.
would recommend use
Yeah.
some of the pre-tuned models. Thank you so much for patiently listening to my. Thank you.